A Father's Daughter by me, Stephen Bradley Waters. Jessie. At the age of 7, Jessie's birth feels so long ago. The little things remain locked into memory like time capsules, though the details surrounding those events fade into the distance. Taking her home from the hospital for the first time was exciting and nerve-wracking. Knowing how delicate she is and feeling a sense of protecting her in a bubble to shield her from the world still resonates today. As an overly protective parent, she knew to hold my hand as we walked along the street and through crowds of people. The thought of anything happening to this precious angel bear not contemplating. Of course, as she gets older, the urge to protect will be outweighed by the necessity to provide her with the freedom to explore and develop her individuality. The balance and transition won't be as smooth as one would prefer, and of course not of one's choosing. Two parents have a say in her upbringing, and there are also Jessie's wishes to consider, a fact I expect to hear all too often as she reaches adolescence. A possible rebellion may be in the offing. An infectious smile complements her adoring and charming personality, free-spirited, full of joy and playfulness. She is both funny and compassionate. She doesn't like to see other people suffering and feels a sense of protectiveness to younger, more vulnerable children. She is approachable without arrogance, an impressive upgrade from both mother and father. Almost all parents feel a sense of adoration and love for their children, and if they didn't, that would be rather worrying. I will love my daughter through any flaws and mishaps that may occur, though I feel I got fortunate and hit the jackpot. Jessie is remarkable, with her beauty, impeccable morals and charm, and created in part by me is even more peculiar. I have the singing voice of a donkey. Jessie has an angelic voice, which she could develop, and who knows what the future will bring. Her personality has so many positive facets that the possibilities are endless. I have fleeting moments of randomness with complete disregard for other people's opinions on how my behaviour appears, a goofball which Jessie enjoys. Smiling from ear to ear, she makes me want to be that man-child, much like Peter Pan and whisk her off to Neverland. There are some moments when we are very much like that. In a field we played sorcery with sticks as wands, casting spells upon each other, and those around us as if we were characters from Harry Potter. Pretending to ride horses, we galloped and raced through wide open fields, laughing joyfully. These moments happen, and they aren't in made-up stories. The world around us can be rather unforgiving, but it's essential to take the time to have fun and transcend reality, if only for a short while. I'm going to skip a chapter to the next following one, Psychic. My life was in turmoil with uncertainty, an emotional mess consumed by dread and loss. Mum knew a few local psychics. She arranged for me to have a tarot reading of a lady named Sal at my parents' home. I was sceptical, though had an open mind. The beauty of life is the unknown of what could happen next. It's a mystery. For life to be planned out in advance would lose the thrill of living it and have the potential to be boring. I was at a crossroads, feeling lost, void of hope or understanding of my circumstances. There was no better time to know my future. As soon as the psychic reading commenced, it felt like Sal understood what I was going through without being told, immediately understanding my circumstances and the problems I endured. She emphasized, "You are stuck without any control while everything is happening around you." I'd never considered my current predicament that way, but it made perfect sense. Regardless of what I did, it made no difference to anything. That one comment stayed in my head for a long time and remains with me to this day. It gave me a sense of peace and tranquility amongst the mayhem that ensued, realizing that so much is beyond my control, allowing me to relax in moments when I otherwise would have been on edge and anxious. It was evident to Sal that the current issue blighting me and causing distress was the ending of a relationship and separation from my daughter. It was a recent event, so I was shocked that she knew. Sal recognised that Cassie had issues, stating that she's not all there, a reference to being crazy. I confirmed that as correct. Sal was adamant that I would see Jessie soon. She couldn't confirm when, but was comfortable telling me it would happen. There were a lot of lies and deceit from Cassie and her mother. She warned that I couldn't afford to slip up even once. I had to be perfect throughout the proceedings, otherwise everything would go against me, playing into their hands as they tried to set me up as something I'm not. She asked if I have the women's solicitors or the man, suggesting that women will do well. That was pleasing, as I had an all-women legal team supporting me. Although Sal was adamant that it wouldn't last, Cassie was in a secret relationship. She didn't specify for how long or why it would fail, but she was absolute in her confirmation. I hadn't been sure whether Cassie had been visiting her cousin as she had suggested. My solicitors and family felt she was cheating, but I didn't want to believe that. Hearing it from an impartial person with apparent psychic abilities confirmed my need to accept the infidelity and move on. There was a suggestion that Cassie was either taking drugs or abusing alcohol. I felt it unlikely that maybe the drinking as she enjoyed getting smashed weekends before our relationship, with her now solely responsible for both children though. I think perhaps Sal was referencing her medication as she had a few different pills to help her cope with her issues. That could be a reference to drugs. It doesn't always have to be sinister. Sal emphasised, "You must always be one step ahead of her, it's imperative." I'd already started to gather evidence in preparation for an almost certain custody battle through the courts. Her prophecy was underway, as I put my heart and soul into doing everything to get my daughter home. No stone was being left unturned. I was relentless. The topic of court proceedings was very insightful. She suggested the court proceedings would conclude within 6 to 7 weeks. Full custody of my daughter won't be for another 7 to 8 months. This conflicting information confused me. Even today I try to understand the significance of what she means. How can court conclude within weeks but not get custody for nearly a year later? That made no sense. You don't have to give in to any of her demands, of this Sal was sure. She knew the battle between us would be brutal and not without sacrifice and heartache, but I must remain strong. Eventually Cassie will give up the fight. Again, this was vague. Give up through court, after court, give up fighting me, or give up trying to hold our daughter against her wishes. It could be anything at any moment. All I can do is the right things and hope that someday my daughter can come home to me. Cassie isn't interested in your shared tenancy flat. It's yours if you want it. She won't be coming back with the words I didn't want to hear. I had hoped that her recent actions were an impulsive decision she would regret and return home where she was loved and adored. To hear that it wouldn't happen was soul-crushing and destroyed me inside. The life I had loved was gone forever. Sal explained, "You won't want anything to do with Cassie and have absolutely no feelings for her." I was at a loss. Over the many years of our relationship, Cassie had been trying and unpredictable, but I never felt at that any moment that I would hate her to the point of not caring. Even in the moments I suffered, my love for her was immense. She would have to push me to hell and back to lose the love. Something I don't think she would do. She's not that nasty. Selfish at times, yes, but not vengeful. I wasn't sure about me not having any feelings for her. It didn't seem possible. Although everyone has their breaking point. We can only tolerate so much before the charm is gone and replaced by darker feelings of resentment and hate. There was a strong feeling from Sal that Cassie's family underestimated me. Likely they were comparing me to Emma's dad, who doesn't have a similar commitment towards his daughter, as I do mine. That'd be their downfall, as nothing would stop me from pursuing my daughter's happiness and assuming my rightful place in her life. They were wrong if they felt I would quit because it gets too complicated or expensive. "Your daughter will be in hospital," were the words that overshadowed everything. I froze and felt a sense of uneasiness. Of course, the worst case scenarios immediately came to mind. Then the thought of her needing to be there can't be good, whatever the reason. I questioned the validity, but Sal was sure of it. It made me more desperate than ever to get Jessie home, soon. The next topic wasn't any better. There will be a funeral. Sal wouldn't elaborate on Hugh's funeral, but there would be one. My stepdad had been battling cancer for a few years, but seemed to be doing fine, so apart from him I couldn't think of who it could be. Whoever it was, it would be terrible. It played on my mind for a while after the reading. Who on earth could it be? There won't be any new relationship for the foreseeable future, as I'm not in that place yet, though Jenny will come back into my life. This confused me, as I didn't know a Jenny I could recall. I had known Holly a few years ago before my relationship with Cassie. Maybe she saw the double letters in her name instead of a specific name. That's the only way to make sense without dismissing it altogether. One part of the reading was unconvincing, which cast doubts on all of it if it is wrong. Sal said, "You will see your natural father." Not this one here, as he's not your natural father, is he? She pointed at the empty sofa where my stepdad usually sits. We had the reading while he was out, as he didn't believe in psychics or anything paranormal. You'll receive money from him. No matter how often I made it clear that I was genuinely not interested in seeing him, she was in no doubt. I explained that I'm not one of those people who say one thing but secretly want to. My stepdad raised me alongside my mum and siblings. This was my family. My natural father was no more than a sperm donor in my eyes. I don't hold any regret, anger, or feel vengeful. It's simply that my family is large enough as it is. To wait until I was in my 30s to get in touch was pointless. I had a child of my own. I didn't need a dad to care or love me. I am a dad. My time as a child finished a long time ago. There's only one way I can envisage seeing him, if it was on his deathbed and it was a dying wish. I'm not so cold-hearted that I would deny someone closure for something they may want to make amends, finally. My mum and sisters told me he has many more children. I'm the oldest boy, but he has another life now. I briefly looked at his social media on LinkedIn, which portrayed him as having a successful career. We communicated via email shortly a few years ago. He wanted to meet while I didn't. He stated that he had reconciled with his other children. They shared a few tears. I clarified that there'd be no tears from me as I don't feel emotional about what happened. My mum raised me well in his absence. Money was a sore spot in my life at this moment in time. Debts mounted from my bills and those Cassie left behind, getting worse each week. My mind wasn't in a place capable of addressing them anytime soon. What's the point when everything in my life was gone? Although your financial situation is difficult, you will be okay, were Sal's comforting words. Though there didn't seem to be an end in sight, just more problems on top of the previous. Debt after debt continually increases. Who knows what the future has in store? But it's not something I dwell on. My priority is my daughter. Innocence. The bond between Jessie and me has been firm from the moment she was born. I'd never been so proud of something or someone in my entire life. I was concerned that Jessie might be born with medical defects. Cassie is a carrier of a low immune system genetic condition. The worry wasn't that my life would be challenging to manage with the added problems. It's that I wanted the best possible life for Jessie. It became apparent early on that Jessie had skin issues. Her skin flared up, becoming hot and itchy. Our dog Daisy was rehomed as her hair worsened Jessie's condition. I suffer from dry skin and Cassie has eczema, so it shouldn't have surprised me. Jessie's skin is manageable using only medicated skincare products while avoiding traditional hand washes and bath soaps. Keeping her away from heat for extended periods is also beneficial. Once the skin flares, it worsens as she can't help but itch, which causes infections and more irritability. As babies tend to be up at night, causing havoc crying, I cared for Jessie through the night, providing her with a bottle, taking care of nappy changes and entertaining her while Cassie slept. I'd also ease her back to sleep as she needed rest. Playing with her and watching her grow and develop provided great enjoyment. I often played peekaboo with her through her crib and cot, lay and interact with her. Jessie's development and sense of being loved was and is hugely important to me. I taught and encouraged Jessie by supporting her, whether it be crawling, standing, walking or speaking. Compared to Jessie's half-sister Emma at 3 years old, Jessie's speech was a lot clearer. I spent my time nurturing Jessie, whereas Emma didn't get that support from her father. When he arrived to collect Emma, he often struggled to understand what she was trying to say. I encouraged Jessie to share toys, as selfishness and being spoilt wasn't a trait I wanted to instill into her mindset from an early age. It was important to me that she be modest, approachable and kind-hearted. She'd go on to be all these things and more, a genuinely remarkable and kind-hearted person. Jessie's achievements astounded me and filled my heart with so much pride. Witnessing her stand supported, holding on to something was a significant milestone, as was her doing the same thing unaided, crawling, walking and speaking. It all blew me away. She grew and developed in front of my eyes. Between 2 and 3 years old, she was and is the case with most toddlers a handful. She'd growl and get angry. It was a rather tiring time in her development. Testing boundaries and limits were a regular occurrence. I provided a consistent discipline structure, so Jessie grew to develop an understanding of the behaviour expected of her. She needed to be respectful and considerate of others, understand boundaries, and as her speech developed, ask for things with manners. Please and thank you don't cost anything, but make a significant difference when interacting with people. I'm going to skip forward a couple of chapters to argument. The biggest blowout in our relationship occurred on April 21st, 2017. just 3 days before Cassie took Jessie. Cassie had regularly abandoned the children at weekends to stay with her cousin in Kent. I became suspicious about where she was going and with whom. Relations between us were for many weeks. Cassie had said she visits him as the only one that really knows me. It made no sense to me, as I felt that having lived with her for almost 8 years, no one knew her better than me. As time passed, we became opposites, struggling to agree on anything, regardless of how trivial. Unprovoked and entirely out of nowhere, as I parked the car, Cassie became irate, swearing in a rage of anger. We had dropped the kids off at school and were about to collect a dog to walk, a task we did daily while the kids were in school. Shocked and confused, I had no idea where her anger originated. She'd recently returned a few days prior from frequent weekends away. It became evident that whoever she spent time with was manipulating or encouraging her to argue with me to make our life together uncomfortable. I didn't like to see Cassie upset, but I always hold my own when confronted. I'm not violent, but will stand up for myself. Enduring a barrage of abuse took its toll. I tried to remain calm, but the restraint reached its limit. I retorted by shouting back at her, telling her what I really thought about the weekends away, her behaviour, and my feelings about her family members. Eventually, everything I'd been holding in for so long had finally surfaced. Her family were great at talking the talk, but they were never there for her when it came to doing anything. I lost respect for them long ago, so I hadn't visited their home for a long time. I chose to vacate the living room whenever they visited, though this was rare. Cassie was fuming, more so than the beginning. I hadn't held back in my assessment. The mood between us was volatile. Both hated one another. On this occasion, I remained in the car, doing my best to calm down and relax, listening to music. Cassie walked the dog around a nearby field, though she cut the walk short as she struggled to focus. The drive home was incredibly intense after returning the dog to its owner. We hardly spoke until Cassie started up again, with more complaining and accusations. I did my best to remain calm. Her behaviour worried me. I already know she was unpredictable and impulsive. There was a genuine concern that she may do something untoward. I wasn't sure what, but she was capable of anything. I warned her that if she ever does anything to cause Jessie to be distressed, or she loses the laughter and joy in her heart, I will do everything to ensure she is in my care. It's not my intention for us to go through court, but if I must, I will do everything for her. Cassie became defensive and unpredictable. She was threatening to jump out of the car while we was driving a speed at Country Lane. Upon arriving home, she was enraged, shouting. I demanded she get out of the vehicle, and she would never be in my car again. I was fed up of being treated so horrendously when I'd been doing everything to support her. The lack of respect was unforgivable. Cassie phoned her dad. I could hear her saying she couldn't cope anymore, complaining and making me out to be a lunatic. As always, she is the innocent victim in her stories. I'd had enough of listening to the conversation. I suggested she put the phone down and we go to the council to sort out our living situation. Cassie agreed, though refused to leave the car upon arriving at the offices. After some persuasion, she joined me. The consensus was that one of us had to remove our name from the joint tenancy, which neither of us agreed to do. I'm honest, and would allow her to remain at the flat until she found a new home. She didn't like the flat anyway. I didn't trust Cassie at all. I knew she would evict me immediately, regardless of what she said. She can be deceiving and selfish. The mood between us relaxed and conflict temporarily receded. Cassie made herself comfortable on the sofa while I made a cup of tea before retreating to the bedroom to work on the computer. The kitchen had become a source of irritation for weeks. I'd had no assistance with the chores and tidying of the home. Dirty dishes mounted for a few days. I intentionally avoided it to see if she would be proactive and try to wash up. I raised the issue before she got too comfortable watching a movie. She responded that she would watch a horror movie and then do the washing up when I left to collect the children from school. I would have preferred it be done sooner to ensure clean dishes for the kids returning home, but I accepted her proposal to avoid further arguments. Upon arriving home with the children, I was shocked as it was evident that there had been no attempt to wash up. When I collected the children from school, Cassie suggested doing it, so I couldn't understand why the mess remained. Confronting her just made the situation more confusing. The excuse was that she'd been packing Emma's bag for a sleepover at school, and now she was preparing the bar for Jessie as she had a birthday party to attend. By this point I was fuming. There was no excuse. I made my feelings clear. Emma was more than capable of packing her bag. Had the washing up been done by the time I arrived home, I could have cooked the dinner while she tended to the bath. But now there wasn't enough time to wash up and make the dinner. I was starving as we hadn't eaten all day, and the children needed a meal before going to their respective group activities. Cassie was surprisingly calm. She thought we could stop at McDonald's on the way to the birthday. I explained that there wouldn't be enough time as we're now behind schedule and are likely to be late. She was never good with logistics, always leaving me to decide, then blame me if it doesn't work out. She places burdens and responsibilities on me so she can be free from blame. As we approached the junction to McDonald's, I asked what we were doing, whether I was driving into McDonald's or just going to the party. Cassie told me to decide. I told her the decision was hers as I'm tired of always choosing and being blamed. Realising the apparent situation of being late for the party, she decided to go directly there without stopping. She suggested Emma could have something to eat at the cafe. We arrived to find the cafe closed. Only snacks were available. Emma wasn't happy and didn't make the situation easy for anyone. She refused all food suggestions. Nothing was good enough for her. I felt the situation was an unavoidable mess. If only Cassie had done the washing up as agreed. I watched Cassie try to make the best of a bad situation. She did well with the suggested options, even persuading staff to make a sandwich. It was Emma causing the problems by consistently refusing everything offered. Eventually, she had to make do with simple snacks of chocolate and crisps. Towards the end of the party, I asked Jessie if she could get Emma some food from the party table. She returned with pizza, sausage rolls and snacks. Jessie's always helpful and considerate of others. There was more chaos to come. Cassie asked if there would be time to stop at KFC after the party. My response was simple though, in hindsight somewhat sarcastic. How can there be enough time to stop when the party finishes at the same time Emma is due to be at her sleepover? As soon as it finishes, we're already late. Cassie was surprised, but I was staggered by her confusion and didn't know what she was expecting. As I said earlier, she doesn't think about the logistics or reality of what is needed to get from one place to another. At her request though, we stopped at KFC en route to the school, much to my reservations. It was a day from hell with no end in sight. Upon leaving the drive-thru, Jessie's box of food tipped into the back seat, which had sand from a recent school project. Cassie was fuming, shouting at me in full view of the children. I navigated the roundabout slightly too fast to compensate for the time wasted. I suggested she calm down, and then when we stop I'll give Jessie some of my food. Jessie was excellent about the situation, though Cassie was like the devil possessed. As we got closer to our destination, she started giving some of her food to Jessie while looking at me with disdain. It was a blatant attempt to anger me. I ignored her and provided some of my food to Jessie as promised upon arriving. Emma felt anxious when we arrived at school. Cassie had made a scene in the car which had her upset. She suggested that Emma wouldn't be allowed to take food and may not even be admitted to the sleepover as we were late. Emma felt insecure and concerned. I told Cassie to calm down. I then mentioned that I had already told Emma in the morning to inform the school that she would be a little late as her sister had a party to attend. Emma confirmed they were aware of the arrangements. I suggested she doesn't worry then as everything would be fine. Cassie walked Emma into school with the food. Upon returning to the car, I asked if everything went fine. She replied bluntly, yes. My response was simple, good. The drive home was tense and quiet, which would be the calm before the storm. As we arrived home, Jessie went to her bedroom to play. I made myself comfortable on the sofa, expecting the day's stress to be behind us. Cassie didn't share that same expectation. She was ready for another round of arguing, shouting at me that she was going for full custody without considering whether Jessie could hear. I was shocked, as we agreed to do 50-50 shared care as it was in Jessie's best interests. Jessie wanted to reside with me rather than a mother and sister. She understood what that would entail, but it's what she wanted. Our bond is incredibly close as it has been from the moment she was born. After Jessie clarified her feelings, I suggested that maybe 50-50 would be the best arrangement so she could spend time with everyone evenly. It made her very happy. Cassie then agreed, so I didn't understand the change in arrangements now. I made it clear that if she's going for full custody, so am I. But for her to get full control, she would have to prove I'm an unfit father. She responded, you're a great father. She then asked about her. I explained you can't wash up or cook dinner, let alone look after the kids. If you can show me that you can step up and do those, then I have no problem with our original arrangement. I don't know what she was expecting me to say. Criticising her doesn't come easy, and I certainly don't take pleasure from it. I'd be thrilled if she were the caring, nurturing and playful parent that I am, but she isn't. Throughout Jessie's life, I've been responsible for everything. For this reason, our bond is so strong, and we have incredibly similar personalities, which makes everything effortless between us. I texted my mum, explaining the need for a solicitor as Cassie mentioned custody of our daughter. Mum promptly messaged back to say that she would call me. I replied to wait, explaining that it's not a good time as I think it would push Cassie over the edge. I was worried she would become paranoid. Surprisingly, my phone rang. Mum was calling. By this point, she wasn't interested in how Cassie was feeling. She'd witnessed enough over the past few weeks, all the torment and abandoning of the kids. I answered the call in the bedroom. Jessie came into the room shortly after while I was talking. She was concerned and explained, "Mummy's crying." I responded with shock, "Not again." I explained to my mum, "Cassie's upset, I'll call you back." I walked into the living room to comfort Cassie and let her know we could resolve the situation without drama. Those good intentions waned when I witnessed her in tears on the sofa, talking on the phone. It was evident to me that she felt sorry for herself and more than likely made up stories to whoever she spoke to. 3 days later, my daughter would be abducted from school without warning by the mother of my child. Depression. The profound sense of loss and feeling of hopelessness was overwhelming. Positive thoughts eluded me, replaced with an aura of negativity and bewilderment. The drain on my mind and body was immense. Performing simple tasks around the home became cumbersome. Random unscheduled naps became a regular occurrence as my mind couldn't maintain the constant flurry of thoughts working their way into my soul. Sleeping at night was difficult. My mind was in overdrive, not allowing for a much-needed respite, and never letting me feel settled or comfortable. It was the definition of depression. A severe mental illness which affects most people during their lifetime. Some have mild symptoms, whilst others are severe. Each day was a battle to get through without feeling tormented by abuse of the most imaginable quality. Throughout our relationship, I supported Cassie with all her issues, remaining stable and comforting. In her own words, I was her rock. To now push me to the brink of my existence was pure evil. My family and doctors were concerned about my health. It became apparent to all those around me that I was at my most vulnerable and in total despair. I was mentally healthy, never allowing circumstance or people to make me feel low about myself. Jessie was my weakness, the one thing that could break my heart. She means everything to me. The pain I enjoyed was for her more than myself. I had a broken heart, but I knew she did too. It was hopeless. There was no way to resolve the situation. More than anything, I wanted to fly in like a hero and make everything better. But I didn't even know where she was. I couldn't reach out and cuddle or tell her I love her. Photos, home videos and songs contributed to the uncontrollable tears. Even moments when I felt fine were fraught with vulnerability, as I cried without warning. I became reclusive, only venturing outside when there was no alternative. Wearing sunglasses gave me a shield to hide the tears from the outside world. Cassie took the life I cherished away from me, replacing it with incredible loneliness and isolation, a stark contrast to the experience I'd loved. My mind was tormented. Despite all the suffering Cassie made me endure, I still loved her immensely. While the primary source of sadness was the sudden loss of Jessie from my life, there was also a lot of pain for losing Cassie. For all her failings and indiscretions, I felt that we were meant for each other. I loved her more than she would ever know, something I regret by not telling her often enough or maybe even displaying regularly. For a long time, I blamed myself, bore the responsibility for everything that had happened. It was my fault. If only I had been more comforting, understanding and loving, all this wouldn't have happened. Everyone would still be home. Life wouldn't have changed so dramatically. The reality was that I did the best I could. Cassie didn't show much love towards me. She was often hot and cold. It wasn't easy to be affectionate when the other person didn't appear happy to be with you. There were moments when she would adore me, but then it would change quickly. It was incredibly confusing. I had to compose myself between all the suffering and concentrate for the periods my mind would allow me to build a court case. There were many messages to retrieve and document. I worked tirelessly and diligently to gather everything that would be useful and record and note my thoughts to help cope with the torment. It reached a point where my solicitors had to assert control and inform me not to send any more evidence unless requested, as I had inundated them with too much paperwork, an entire drawer filled with my case files. Remembering how Cassie had dealt with her depression, I decided to try exercise, which was a great source of self-healing. It broke up the days to make them seem shorter and more manageable. The activity made me more tired than usual, which helped with my sleep. The main benefit was that I was beginning to feel better about myself. Time is a healer, though each day felt like a week, a month felt like a year. My daughter was a lifetime away. I had to get myself healthy and back to the person I was before this happened. My daughter needed me to be at my best to fight for her. I slowly regained my mind from the evil that had conjured a spell of destruction upon it. Strength returned and spirit restored. I had relapses in between, as the ensuing battle was long and demoralizing.